Welcome to the 326th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Thank you and welcome. Well, the Odyssey Swim Run event in Austin, Texas is in the books. For those of you that are new to the podcast, a swim run event is, it should be, I guess, a run swim event because you run and then you swim, and then you run and you swim. And we did the long course. The event was held in Pace Bend Park, just a little bit west of Austin in the Hill Country. And was, again, a little bit of running, a little bit of swimming. I think there were 6 legs of running or 6 legs of swimming, 7 legs of running, I believe is how it went. But we did the same event last year, and last year our time, Michael and I did it as a team event where you have the option to be tethered. This year they delayed the start 45 minutes because of fog, so we elected not to tether swimming. You have to stay together. You have to run together. You have to finish together. If there's any, you can tether if you want to, but last year we had quite a bit of problems with the tether. We got tangled up. I got twisted up in it. We got caught on a rock. We got caught on a stick. So we elected to swim together this year and see how it went, and that was a big improvement. So our time last year was 5 hours and 16 minutes. We were 31st place out of 34 teams. And this year, we had a time of 4:46 and 13 seconds. We were 33rd out of 42 teams. Now, you may say that stinks because we didn't win, but we considered it a win because we were significantly faster. And the things that we focused on, one, besides not being tethered, was we swam a little bit more. Last year, because of COVID, we couldn't get into the swimming pool to do any swimming. We have done no open water swimming since last year. But I've been doing, and Michael's been doing too, we've been doing independent pool swimming. So we had a little bit more swim fitness. The other thing that we decided, or aha moment last year, was that it's a lot easier to run if your wetsuit is unzipped. We didn't unzip the wetsuit into the very end. So this event, just to, I guess, add a little bit more detail to it, you swim with your shoes on, you run with your wetsuit on, and it's a special wetsuit that is a shorty wetsuit, so it's shorts and short sleeves and short, as far as shorts go. So it's just to give you buoyancy and a little bit of protection from the cold water, but not to be a long traditional triathlon or open water swimming wetsuit. So it's a little lighter, but nevertheless, it's fairly thick, and it zips up the front. Most traditional triathlon wetsuits zip up the back. So you can get to the zipper in this one much easier. However, you have to wear a bib at all times, a race vest over your wetsuit. So you have to reach up and unzip. But well worth it. You can breathe a lot better when you can get some expansion of your chest and your shoulders, and it gives your shoulders a little bit of a break from being, trapped inside the wetsuit. So that indeed helped our time. The other thing that helped our time was having done some more trail races and being used to being on trails and rocks and things like that. So we were a little bit more confident in that. So besides wearing a wetsuit and your running shoes, you also swim with paddles and use a pool buoy. So if you're not a swimmer, a pool buoy is a flotation device you put between your legs, keeps you in the air, and use your arms, because if you're swimming with your shoes on, obviously it's going to cause your legs to sink. So you need something to give you a little bit of buoyancy. So the swim is predominantly what is all arms. So the running is your legs and the swimming is your arms, and you have this pool buoy and the wetsuit that offers you more buoyancy. So we'd practice with the paddles, and if anybody's, done swimming, the paddles are a bit of a shoulder workout, but you also get some more glide with it. So again, we swam with the paddles, unzipped the wetsuit. So we were, ahead of the game just on those few items this year. And it did pay off. If we looked at our swim from last year, we were about 30 seconds faster per 100 yards, going on what a Garmin would say. And our runs were much improved too, 30 seconds to a minute. Where we didn't make much progress, and I don't know that there's much progress to be made, honestly. When you come out of, so this Pace Bend Park is, again, in Texas, and the river, it's a bit of an island, and it's surrounded by the Colorado River. So you're in and out. You go through the trails, come back, swim cove to cove, so to speak, get out and run a little bit around this park area. And it's fairly steep. There's even a cliff jump that you can do that's about 40-foot drop. So you have to run down to the water. Then you climb back up across the rocks. And about at least 4 to 5 of the exits were up pretty steep rock climbs to the point where you're using your hands and legs to climb up the face of these rocks. They're like big limestone stair steps, basically, but they're not stair steps. They're natural rock formations that are wet and slippery, and you're wet and slippery when you come out. The other thing that occurs when you don't do swim run training, as we did not, is that when you've been swimming for 1,000, 1,200 yards at a time, you start to become a little bit dizzy when you first stand up coming out of the water. So you don't really have your footing, your balance. You're on slippery, wet rocks underneath of you, and then you're climbing out and climbing up over a climb that could be any place from 10 to 30 feet up to try to get up, and then where you can get back to the trail and run. So that did slow us down a little bit. Like I said, don't know much more training that we can do on that. It's a matter of being mobile, and that's sort of the other thing that the wetsuit does decrease your mobility as far as your climbing, because you're impeded because of the wetsuit around your legs and your thighs. So it's a little comical at times coming out of the water, but everybody has that same issue, and that's just how it was. As far as age of this events, we still were in the top 5% of the oldest people there. There was one other woman that was 60 years old in the race. There were several men that were in their late 50s or 60s. Their oldest man was 71 who did the short course. We did the long course, which was about 15 and a half miles running total and 3.5 miles of swimming. The water temperature was about in the high 60s, low 70s for the most part. And it was kind of funny, depending on what side of the island you were on, the water was a little bit different in temperature. But it seemed a little bit warmer this year, which I was pleasantly surprised. We started out with an air temperature about 46, 48 degrees. So that was a little nippy for Floridians. But nevertheless, once we got running, you warmed up pretty good. So I think it was like a 1.1 mile swim, or 1.1 mile run before you hit the water. So you're kind of warmed up from the air temperature, and then the water was warmer than the air, so you felt good. The Colorado River is beautiful in that area. Not a lot of visibility. In some sections, there were more visibility than others. But, there was no boat smell or diesel smell in past and triathlons. The water actually smells of diesel fuel or taste of diesel fuel, so to speak. But, everything felt really, really clean. It was a beautiful day once the fog lifted, blue skies. And when you go to breathe to the right side, you could see the limestone, big stones up to where the cliffs were, and the trees, and of course the greenery. And it was just, it's out there in the middle of nowhere. There's no houses. It's just being in nature. So it was just really peaceful. I have to say that I really enjoyed the swim this year. I got into a rhythm pretty early because we hadn't done any open water swimming. I had been sighting for a while. Typically, you got to swim. When you're swimming in a pool, you just follow the black line, down to one end, you make a turn, you come back. But when you're in the open water swimming, you have a little bit of current, and there wasn't much in the way of current, but just you can get off course a little bit, so you have to kind of raise up to see where you were sighting wise. And I was doing a little zigzagging at first and got myself offline a little bit, so we'd have to get back together and then go from there. Again, the visibility wasn't real good, so I could see Michael's heels, and we could try to stick together at first. But gradually we got that down, or I guess I got that down better. As far as trying to keep the shoreline close to the right and keep within the group. It was actually nice to be in a group this year as opposed to kind of being out there on our own and eventually catching some people. So we kind of felt more in the thick of things than we were last year, and I think we were a little bit more competitive. And so that felt good, made it a little bit more fun and challenging and motivated. We didn't want to get caught. We were trying to catch people. There were 3 aid stations, I believe, on the course, and they had water, electrolyte drink, bananas, grapes, and some gels. We carried our own gels. The wetsuits have pockets in the leg of them, so we carried our own gel. One of the aid stations was out of water and electrolyte solution when we got there, and it was unfortunate because I had come out of the water, and we were actually running on a sand/gravel type trail leading up to a road, and I was trying to unzip my wetsuit and eat a gel at the same time and wasn't paying attention to my footing, and the next thing you know, I was flying through the air and it landed on my head. Luckily, my swim cap caught me, and I did whack my head pretty good, but I didn't knock myself out. But didn't really leave a mark other than sand on half my face that I had to wear for until it really fell off because there was no water at the next aid station. But I wasn't hurt. It was just again a stupid error doing multitasking on almost completely flat turf. It was like Harvey said last week on the podcast. When it's really technical, you're watching where you're going. When it's not, you kind of quit paying attention and things happen. So there was one 3-mile section there after no water that we got a little hot because it was starting to heat up, and it wasn't in near as much tree cover as some of the other trail areas. And so that got a little bit, probably slowed us down a little bit because of that. Most of the trail was what we call single track, so enough for your 2 feet and nothing much else. And then there were some rock beds, kind of like an old creek bed, that were pretty big boulders. It's kind of funny. I imagined it much worse last year. It seemed much worse than this year. It seemed like the whole thing was rocky last year, where this year there was a fair amount that was maybe roots and dirt. The back half was a little bit more on the rocky and more technical. That slowed us down. We walked up some of the hills. They weren't very big hills, but we walked up a couple of those. We had to walk in sections where it was very rocky and uneven footing and with tree roots and things. So that slowed us down a little bit. Could we, become more efficient trail runners? Hopefully we will. We might get a few minutes there. But all in all, we did pretty good. I think we could probably shave 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes off next year. We'll have to see. It's, it's starting to get a little tighter now because we didn't do as many stupid things this year as we did last year. But, overall, I think we did great. We had a really good time. Again, the weather was good. People were nice. Hospitality. At the end of the race, they had pulled pork sandwiches, but they also had a quinoa dish that was quinoa and sweet potato and peppers and onions. So it was actually a pretty good dish, and they had drinks. Beforehand, before it started, there was actually an area we could sit in that was warmer, and rather than being out in the cold. And they had coffee and bagels if you wanted it, and peanut butter, and had some burritos if people wanted it. Before the race, I always eat a bar. I had a Kate bar and a banana. That's what I eat before every race. I don't bother with a lot of big stuff. I try to eat 2 hours before I race and then shut it down. I think I had 3 gels on the course. I like Huma gels. They have some chia seeds in them. And I do a Cliff, from the Cliff Bar people. They make a gel. And I did a goo. So those are my gel. I think I had one little sip of the electrolyte drink kind of by mistake. I try not to drink anything that I'm not used to for fear I might get some cramps. It actually tasted pretty good. I can't remember the name that the company uses, but it wasn't bad at all. No, it didn't have any sugar or anything, and it was just electrolytes. I would say that the level of exertion for one of these races, or this particular one, was almost that of a half Ironman. Certainly more than a half marathon. The running is easier, even though it's 15 and a half miles, because it's on trails, it's softer, and it's intermittent. Same way with the swimming. Because it's intermittent, you kind of get a rest, so you rest your arms and you rest your legs. I really think the cold water is good on your legs, after running. So I really did enjoy getting in the water after doing some runs, especially when it started to get a little hotter. There didn't seem to be much in the way of water support this year. I mean, you swim along, you can swim as close to the shoreline as you want. I mean, it starts to get, rocky, but the water gets deep pretty quick once you leave the shoreline. But there wasn't much in the way of support if anybody had any issues. If you did the race solo, you had to carry an additional flotation device in case you got into trouble. And the idea of swimming with a tether is that your partner, this is very much a partner race, that if something was going to happen, your partner would be there. So the safety is really in being a team or having that additional flotation device. I would suggest anybody, I love the team concept of being able to race together and, swim together and run together. It was, really, really fun. And, I enjoyed it much more than I think I would have if it would have just been a solo effort. So I got to say, I'd highly recommend anybody that has done triathlon or likes to swim, wants to do a little bit of running, to check out the Odyssey Swim Run. I'll leave a link to the run sign-up event so you can see they have events in Austin, in Michigan, in, I believe, Maine. There's one in Orca Island in Washington State. So they have a lot of different areas. It was originally started in Sweden, and to be able to qualify for the championship, you need to win one of these events. Obviously, we won't be going there. So last year when we did the swim run for the first time, I have to say it was the first time I ever looked at the ages of the people that were registered and realized that I was in the top tier of those registered for the event. Clearly, most of the people were in their 30s, early 40s. The majority of them, 85%, like I said, maybe 90%. And, it was nice hanging out with people that are younger and positive and motivated. But I don't think it has to be, because I think anybody in their 50s, 60s, and early 70s there shouldn't be any problem to do this event. I just think it's more of people just don't know that it's out there. I had a conversation with one of the members in the practice, and we were talking about, she was somewhat depressed with some of her physical ailments and her lack of progress, and it seemed like in her early 60s that, it was just one thing going wrong after another, and she really couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I told her about this event, and I said, it's kind of all in how you look at things. A lot of times people have the notion that they're going to retire, and that means they can sleep in and go out to eat a lot and play golf and, sit around on the beach and just take it easy. And I can't think of anything worse. I mean, not that golf is bad, but the sit around and not doing anything and just going out to dinner every night. as most of you know, there's really not very many places that you can go out to dinner and not get a salt or oil or both load or calorie load. And, you start to see people pack on the pounds in their early 50s, 60s, and it just kind of continues. And the complaints about arthritis and joint problems and back problems all start to rear their ugly heads, and the metabolic diseases to start. And, I always think that people should see how other people live. I think, when Seth Godin says people like us do things like this, I think people get a storyline in their head that people like us can't do things like this. People in their 50s and 60s and 70s can't do things like this. It's over. It's past. And I don't think that's the case at all. And we're proving it with, some of the members in the practice. They're signing up for marathons. They're doing triathlons. They're very, very active. And it's because they identify with people like them do things like that. They do triathlon. They like the outdoors. They swim, they bike, they run, they hike. And they don't identify with the people like us are retired and we can't. And a lot of physicians will tell people, oh, you've got bad knees, you can't do this, or oh, your back's bad. If you do this, it'll get worse, and don't lift anything, you've had a heart attack. And, it's kind of funny. I heard, and I guess I'm talking as I'm thinking a little bit, but one of our members was told that after his heart attack, that he shouldn't lift anything over 25 pounds. And so he's afraid to do it. He's afraid that his stent would rupture or something bad would happen. So he wasn't doing any lifting or strength training and really was limiting his activity until I met him. On the other hand, people are told every day of their lives you need to exercise and eat healthy, and nobody heeds that. So it's a little bit of a, if somebody tells you to stop, it's okay to stop, but up in your game, well, maybe that's not quite so easy, or changing in that respect is not quite so easy. And I think it comes back to, we'd all like to make our lives easier. And I really do think that easier does not result in better. I think easier results in earlier deterioration. So again, I would encourage you to challenge yourself with, some event that seems outside the box, and start by saying people like us do things like this. People who eat plants do things like this. People that eat plants don't eat donuts. People that eat plants don't go eat oily French fries at Wendy's. People like us don't eat meat. People like us are active. People like us go walk. People like us go ride, run. People like us have no limitation. People like us strength train so that we can preserve our muscle mass and keep our mobility. People like us like to get up off the ground. People like us don't mind to get on the ground so we can get off the ground. People like us like a challenge. And so I'd encourage you to start putting some of those positive affirmations into your day, to do a challenge. We certainly weren't the best people out there, but we had about as much fun as anybody out there. And we enjoyed the event, and we took our time and tried to better it, and we did. And we learned from it, and we're going to try to better it again, or every time we go out. Next up is the California International Marathon for us. And, obviously we'll be looking to do the best that we can there. And then we'll follow that up with a 25K trail run in January and a 50-mile run, which will be our first 50-mile run in February. Then we're headed to Treasure Coast in Stuart, Florida for our group marathon, and I say group, plant-based striders. That's a Facebook group that you can join, but we have several people signed up to do a half marathon or a full marathon on that day. Go over to Treasure Island or Treasure Coast Marathon. It's in Stuart, Florida. You can go over there and look at what events they have, but they have a relay and half marathon. So if you'd like to join us, and it's a great time to start training because you have you got a good 4 months to get going. So if you're a walker right now and you've done a 10K, you can up your game to a half marathon. So think about it. Go over and check it out. Stuart, Florida is beautiful that time of year. The course is beautiful. Who knows? Might see you there. So I finally got I'm going to rant a little bit before I close the podcast out. And you might say everything was going good until I started this rant, and then I lost you. And I'm sorry if that occurs, but after 23 years practicing cardiology in the town of Port Charlotte, I got an email along with other colleagues that said if we don't get a vaccination that we will lose our privileges at a HCA facility called Fawcett Memorial Hospital. We could apply for a religious exemption, but there would be no exemption for those people with natural immunity. As most of you know, or some of you know, if you do listen to the podcast, I did have COVID in December. I treated myself with a vitamin regimen and did good, had no sequelae, was back running in 10 days, and have not had any problems whatsoever. Again, have run faster than I ran before COVID and feel good. But I find it very, in this particular hospital, I've been on the board of directors, I've been the director of the Echo Lab, I've been the director of cardiac rehab, but it doesn't matter because Medicaid and Medicare facilities are those under that jurisdiction that I'm sure there's a check going to facilities that say vaccines are mandated. So it doesn't matter about anything other than money. It's not about health or protection because clearly anybody that's had a vaccine can still transmit the disease. And I would argue that a physician who has had the vaccine would be more likely to continue working with a mild case of COVID and be more likely to transmit it in the hospital than someone that wasn't vaccinated. I'm not saying that people that vaccine, you can, I believe it's free choice. If you want to get vaccinated, that's perfectly fine. But this is not an FDA. This is not a long-term study. It's temporary approval. There is no recourse against the pharmaceutical industries if there is a problem with the vaccine. And I am just very, very disappointed in this hospital that is, threatening to get rid of anybody that's a healthcare provider that is not vaccinated. You can apply for a religious exemption. But again, they do not count having had COVID as a reason, or you get no credit for having survived COVID, so to speak. I think it's a shame. I, along with other healthcare providers, have taken care of patients with AIDS, pneumonia, all kinds of infectious disease, C. diff, MRSA, hepatitis. High-risk patients, people that were non-compliant, people that were angry, people that were from prisons, with people that had money, people that didn't have money, not asking anything and never worrying about myself. To this day, I'm willing to take care of anybody that there's no reason why I wouldn't take care of anybody because of any illness that they might have. So, I find that a little bit disheartening that medicine has turned more towards, it's just, again, it has been, but we're not thinking anymore as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know what's going to happen at this particular hospital. I don't know how many people will walk out. I don't know how many people will protest. But I certainly am voicing my opinion that everybody should have the chance to decide what procedure is done to their body, no matter what it is. This has nothing to do with decreasing or stamping out COVID. We're not going to do that. Everybody recognizes that. It has nothing to do with the spread of COVID because you can spread it with a vaccine. This is all about getting people vaccinated for the sole reason to get people vaccinated. So we'll see, we'll see. All I know is that I had a patient at the hospital today and this week, and it's a new patient that joined our practice because of deteriorating health and could not get help otherwise and has a new diagnosis of cancer. And I went to see her, and I had to get up to the third floor of the parking garage. And, as I was driving up there, it's like all these cars in this big hospital and all these people around, and yet nobody is really getting better. We're just patching people up. So many people in the healthcare industry today, so satisfied with not reversing disease, but satisfied with patching people up with medications not taking into account quality of life, quantity of life, not taking into account how people feel, isolating people in rooms because of COVID. And it was a real shame, the number of people that are working in this healthcare field, and we're not making any progress. More and more buildings are being built in every town to take care of people, but we're really not taking care of people. We're just patching them up, and we're just they're just collecting prescriptions for the most part. When I got out of my car to start walking down the steps to the hospital, the first thing I smelled was hamburger, because it was hamburger day at the hospital. And the kitchen exhausts were blowing up into the air through the parking garage, and I could smell grilled hamburger. And I'm thinking, my patient has colon cancer. The number one diagnosis in this hospital is cardiovascular disease. The number two diagnosis is cancer, and it's hamburger day. So it's hamburger day. And, so I went in to see my patient, and, it took me 3 years to get a plant-based menu on the menu. And when I talked to one of the nurses, she made some comment about, and I said, she's on a carb-restricted diet. And I was like, what do you mean she's on a carb-restricted diet? She's on a plant-based diet. Oh, I don't know. And she had no idea what the difference was nutritionally between a carb-restricted diet and a plant-based diet. She had no reason why anybody would order a plant-based diet. She didn't know it existed. And, therein lies the problem. The first thing that they gave this lady when she presented to the hospital was a regular diet with meat and gravy. And that's the last thing that she needed. We're really missing the boat in general allopathic medicine. And, something has to change, and we're trying to change it on our end, because we're trying to treat our members like a person. They're not bed 307. They're not the cancer in room 2727. They're people that have that their bodies aren't working correctly, but it all relates back to primarily what they eat and how they move and what they've been exposed to. And by continuing to do the same thing, by continuing to feed them like they got sick on, is going to continue to promote that disease process. We can't turn it around with medicines to patch up and to try to fool some of our system. We can't cut out and irradiate things when we keep poisoning things. So maybe it'll be good that I don't know if I'll get my exemption or not. Maybe it'll be good that I'm finally out of the hospital, so I can, scream it to the rooftops that this is not the place you want to be. Luckily, I probably only go to the hospital 5 or 6 times a year in special occasions, in special situations, mainly for my older people, or somebody has a fall or something, or a new patient that wants me to see them because of some illness that they're not getting care for. But I don't know. I don't know how it'll turn out. It's a sad state of affairs. I think as a physician, group, we've been isolated as well. People are struggling. The nurses are struggling. They're overworked in the hospitals. I don't know what they'll do if more and more load is placed on people that ultimately may be in worse health. When I walked through the hospital, the obesity rate was, if I had to, well over 75%. People are overweight, like the standard American population, but there's a significant portion of people that are way overweight. I was stopped in the hallway by a therapist that I hadn't seen for some time because I hadn't been to the hospital for a long time. And she wanted to tell me about the success of a friend who had the diagnosis of colon cancer that had recurred, but his wife read something on plant-based nutrition, and they had begun eating plant-based, and that his numbers were improving, and she was just so amazed that his numbers were getting better on a plant-based diet. And she wished she could do it, but she really just didn't think she could because it was too hard. And, she was overweight. I'm sure she has health problems of her own. And people assume they can't do it. Again, it comes back to people like us do things like this. People like that assume they can't be people like us. sometimes people come into my office and they say, I can't do it. Why can those people eat that way and don't seem to care? Or they're okay with taking pills and they're okay with doing that. I think that's where you have to stop and say, we're not that person. I don't want to be that person. People like us don't have to worry about the medications. People like us can do things. And if people like us have to eat plants, then great. I welcome those plants that make me feel so good. I welcome the fruits and vegetables that make me feel so good. It's not about eating poorly. It's not about being in nutrition jail. It's not about, somebody said today to me that they were told by a Facebook group on plant-based nutrition that you try to eat things that don't taste that good. That way you won't eat that much of them. And it's like, no, I enjoy every meal. I look forward to every meal. I love to cook. I love to cook for people. I love to see the color in the dish. Tonight we had a simple zucchini that I spiralized, and I sauteed it with water and then added some salsa to that. We had a baked potato and pinto beans and an arugula salad with cucumbers and tomatoes and onion and a California balsamic. So it was great. It was a great meal. I love my desserts of fruit. Again, it's fall. Every season has new fruit. Persimmons are in season. If you haven't tried them, please do. They're great orange fruits, a lot of beta-carotene, much benefit for GI cancers. So try new fruits. Apples are in season. There's different varieties. Every year, people that farm apples do new, different varieties to try. So try a new variety of apple. Don't get stuck in the same old realm. A secret on apples. Apples never really excited me so much because up in West Virginia, sometimes we didn't get the best on occasion. So, and if an apple was sitting there, it'd be the last thing I'd choose over a piece of cake or, cookies or something like that. But when I gave up those other things and started to slice that apple up, so slice it up in nice thin pieces, you can taste the fruit so much better. So slice your fruit up and prepare your fruit. So, in a fruit bowl, so it's ready to eat. This morning I had pineapple, blackberries, grapes, and papaya with some almond milk yogurt and chia seeds. That was a great breakfast. At lunch, I had leftovers, eggplant and baby bok choy stir fry with mushrooms and rice with a sauce that I made out of ginger, garlic, a little bit of low-sodium tamari, and a jalapeno. So, food is great. And it's diverse, it's colorful, so there's a lot to enjoy. You're not giving up anything by becoming plant-based. You're opening your world to a whole new variety of spices. I went outside before I was cooking dinner tonight and grabbed some fresh basil to put, in our zucchini as well. I made sourdough bread this week, and I used some of my fresh rosemary outside to put in the bread. So, it's not about giving up anything. It's about giving up disease, giving up sickness, giving up inflammation. But it's all about getting to be people like us who do things like this. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're not too miffed at my rant against the world, but it is how I feel. I believe we all have the choice to be well-informed about our health and make our own healthcare decisions. I believe that we all need to be informed about what is healthy and what's not, and what is actually going to cure us or make us better, and what is just a Band-Aid. And then we get to decide if we want a Band-Aid or we want to actually be healthy. So thank you for listening. Share this podcast with other people. If you enjoyed what you heard, go over to iTunes, give me a 5-star rating. That helps to get it out. Join me on Plant-Based Striders. If you want to run, you want to hear about running or exercising of any kind, show me your photos of where you run. Go over to Jami at drdulaney.com and send me a question. You can go to drdulaney.com and find out how you can be a member of our practice. We can be a member anywhere that you are. We'd love to speak with you and help you on your journey to health and wellness. And who knows, I might see you at a swim run event. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week. P.S. I'd like to thank Michael Hubbard for being my partner on the swim run event, Austin, Texas. See you there next year.